Hey everybody. Um, so to begin this video, I'm going to say that this looks like it's going to be a fun journey, you guys and me. Um, I started this off just looking at studies that involve PewDiePie, as an aside from my research for grad school. And I realized that most of the studies that mention PewDiePie don't mention anything about him per se, other than he's a big YouTuber. And really, like, I have watched maybe 100 videos by PewDiePie, right? Most of them having to do with internet censorship and the apocalypse and whatnot. None of that is ever mentioned except for to say PewDiePie's the biggest YouTuber, right? So um, then I moved on to looking at the studies that mention Anita Sarkeesian. It's a subject that I was interested in, a couple of years back and made a few videos about that subject. And just wanted to know in the past decade, what people were thinking when they were citing her in academic research. And basically, what I found was over 50% of people who wrote academic papers about Anita Sarkeesian were writing about the harassment and abuse that she had happened to her rather than the actual content that she had in her bodies of work. Now, there were a bunch of academic papers citing a few of her videos on YouTube, but other than that, pretty much half of the papers were talking about uh, just the Utah University incident where she wasn't able to speak because of threats, and then the harassment that she got online, and a video game about her getting beaten up. So that's that in a nutshell. Took me 3 videos to figure that out, right? So in the chat, there have been a couple of sea lions. Now, if you don't know what a sea lion is, briefly, that's somebody who's not interested in anything that's germane to the topic that you're speaking about, and they just want to keep talking and debating about an off topic. Um, One of them was wanting to talk about Islam all the time. One of them was wanting to talk about uh, HIV denialism, AIDS denialism. And these are not topics that I've been talking about at all. But one was talking about Joe Biden, which I feel, because I've been politically active, that at least is a callback to videos that I've made in the past. So for that one YouTuber, Poseidon Kicklodon, I have actually looked up all of the studies that mention Joe Biden in the current year, since the beginning of the year 2020, January 1st, to present date, April 24th. And there were approximately 35 um, that came up when I searched the term Biden and election. Now there were a whole bunch more studies because of just searching the term Biden, because there's this genus species of plants called Bidens, that are growing all over the world. That if you just try to search for the term Biden, you're going to get a whole bunch of studies on that. So I had to throw in the term election to get like the best results. Um, so that with that Boolean search, I got around 35 results since January 1st. There were a lot more before that. But I'm just talking about like the current zeitgeist of what academia thinks about Joe Biden. You know, overall, I think all of these searches are going to be a funny look at academia and what their idea of subjects are versus our common parlance when we're talking about these things. But having looked ahead at what we're about to see, this is actually a little bit serious. Um, Now, it's no secret that I lean left in politics, but uh, I'm also someone who likes to find out the truth of things. And by the end of this video, uh, you're going to see a bunch of studies that do not show Joe Biden in a very good light. All right. And it might not be the overall point of the study, right? But I'm just looking at where Biden is mentioned and why, right? Doesn't it doesn't really matter like if it's an off topic to what the study is actually about. Some of it's actually really on topic. But where Joe Biden was mentioned in academia so far this year, we're going to see what the temperature is on how these academics feel about Joe Biden. Okay, so we're going to start with this academic article in the Journal of Pension Benefits. Um, this was published January 1st, 2020, and there's one mention of Joe Biden in it, and it goes on. Joe Biden stands behind the Affordable Care Act and its expansion, wants to shore up Social Security, and supports workplace retirement plans. His website talks about broad access to automatic 401k, but it does not seem to provide details on what this means. On the other side of the aisle, Donald Trump continues to oppose the Affordable Care Act. A search on his website for retirement produces notes regarding his proposed expansion of multiple employer plans and that the Employee Benefit Research Institute claims that 82% of retirees are optimistic about their ability to live comfortably in retirement, up from 75% in 2018. Uh, and the person writing this says that's not the impression they get from people in their circle of friends and colleagues. But what I found interesting about this particular journal article, right? The date on it was January 1st, 2020, right? It starts saying, as 2019 comes to an end and we enter 2020, right? So that's the timing of this article, right? By the way, the name of it is All I Want for the Holidays and the 2020 Political Season, right? So the timing of this is suspect to me because at that time, uh, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders were both very much contenders. In fact, leading in the polls in some places, and winning states and whatnot. There was also Buttigieg won Iowa, shortly thereafter. So there were two people mentioned with plans regarding pensions and healthcare and whatnot. Those two people were Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And I can't for the life of me understand why somebody in January, at the very turn of the year, would think that it was a shoe-in that Joe Biden would be the Democratic nominee when he was he was looking quite embarrassed as like third place, fourth place in polls and stuff. So yeah, it's weird that they just happen to write about Joe Biden rather than Buttigieg or Sanders or Warren or any of the other people who could have won uh, after Super Tuesday. So this is the only article that I saw that had sort of like a correct premonition about how Joe Biden might win the nomination of the Democratic Party. But I'll say that what was said about him here is the most charitable of any of the mentions in academia from January 1st to present, right? We're only looking at a sample of the 35 articles that mention him, but it's a pretty good sample. But it does not get any better than that. Okay? So, next one. This study is called Education Tax Credits, a different trajectory for federal funding of higher education and remediation for effectual policymaking. And it is in the Journal of Student Financial Aid, and it was published March 1st, 2020. And Biden's mentioned uh, 5 times, but it's all in the one place and then in the references at the end. But basically, it's because he's being referenced as being part of this booklet from his 2008 campaign with Barack Obama, and this booklet was called "Blueprint for Change: Obama and Biden's Plan for America." Right, um, and I'd say that's I guess good as far as a mention in academia, but really it's tying him to the Obama campaign's legacy. Um, it's about trying to incentivize going to college and whatnot. But the study overall is looking at like how well these education tax credits actually worked, and basically it's saying that like 18.9 billion of annual expenditure for education tax credits have little to show in returns on investment, right? It's a positive in that they tried something, and it's a positive that it associates Biden with tax credits, but it really doesn't, like the whole article in context does not really work as a positive because it's saying, yeah, they tried, they spent a lot of money, didn't get a lot for it. Next article. This is called Just a Big Misunderstanding, Bias and Bayesian Affective Polarization. Now, the mention of Biden in this doesn't have to do with his personal body of work. It has to do with how respondents in this survey uh, thought about him. But also, this is the one place that it comes up is Joe Biden discusses related ideas uh, in this podcast called Pod Save America, right? And basically, the idea is that quarrels are getting worse between left and right in American politics. And it's based on misunderstanding at first, but then the more you fight, the more people get entrenched. The gulf between the parties gets worse, and yeah, the sky is blue, water is wet. So this one is called this study. Uh, Public support grows for higher teacher pay and expanded school choice, right? And this was in uh, Education Next. It was published on January 1st, 2020. And there are four mentions of Biden in here. Um, Biden, right here, says he wants to triple the amount of money the federal government spends on education of low income children, right? I'd call that a good mention. You know, that's what they think about him, that he wants to triple funding. And other senators and political figures are also mentioned here, like Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, um, you know, and what they want to do with school spending. So this one had more of a sample of all of the contenders to be nominated by the Democratic Party in 2020. Right here, it says again Biden's called for tripling of federal funding for schools serving the economically disadvantaged. Um, Joe Biden, once a supporter of charters, now says the bottom line is that charters siphon off money for our public schools, which are already in enough trouble. Now, this is the part of this where it starts to get dark for Joe Biden because it shows where he stands on the issue now, but it says, oh, but in the past he was the opposite. He used to support charter schools, so not exactly a good look compared to all the other people who are mentioned here in like Cory Booker and Bernie Sanders. Um, in the next study, there's this is called Crack Up: The Decline of Party Responsibility and the Rise of Political Strongmen. You know, study out of the University of California, San Diego. Uh, so when I go down and look at where Biden is mentioned, it says Boehner tried repeatedly to make incremental progress on taxes and entitlements by dealing with Vice President Biden, but no deal was ever good enough to satisfy the most aggressive new member of Congress, who would win coverage and financial support by preventing compromise, Jim Jordan, who Boehner called a legislative terrorist. Uh, he was secretly identifying wavering members of Congress for outside groups to attack with ads and threats to fund primary opponents. So basically, this is saying that Boehner, a Republican, was trying to work with Joe Biden, the vice president, um, on taxes and entitlements, but there was another guy who was trying to make sure that Boehner didn't try to do anything uh, that was bipartisan. Hi, Gwen in the chat. Um, I wouldn't call that a bad mention per se. It's a mention, but it basically says that Biden was willing to be bipartisan on that issue. Boehner was trying to reach him, but then this Jim Jordan guy was subverting that sort of a relationship. Uh, So Dinah Cat Loves Me says this may all be moot since Biden is likely to be forced out and replaced. I'd put that at 65% probable. That that's okay. That if we look at moot things this early in the election run, we're going to have plenty of days together, Dinah. But this will put a rest to the at least the one sea lion in my chat that keeps on asking me to make a look at Biden. Plus, what I found, what we're getting to even later in this, is it's pretty interesting. You know, uh, Gwen says, "Do we agree that Biden is a predator?" What I'll say is that all of the listen and believe people seem to not be listening and believing when it comes to somebody coming out about Joe Biden. Mainstream media has been silent about the voices that have spoken up, and that's troubling for me because I like to see one standard for everyone. Uh, Diana says, meh, I agree he was a bad boy in his time. And Gwen says, have you seen the vids with him and children? Yeah, yeah, it's bad. You know. Anyways, also, there's a lot of things that you can do with video speed that can make anything look bad. Um, Even, certain shivers and ticks can be made to look like really weird things, as we saw in the 2016 presidential election when stuff is sped up and slowed down. You know. Next article. Uh, this is out of the University of Cincinnati. Um, it's called Government Corroborated Conspiracies Motivating Response to and Belief in a Coordinated Crime. Right? And so, what this is saying is he basically was testing whether or not people would believe the 1979 House Select Committee's on assassination report. Um, and he was measuring, as part of a study, uh, a variable of like how people reacted to people like Joe Biden, Angela Merkel, John Roberts, David Cameron, Nancy Pelosi, Eric Holder, and basically trying to see where people's mindset was as one of the variables of the study. What came out as the biggest significant finding was that if you had been uh, given a bunch of exposure to conspiracy theories about the JFK assassination, if you read uh, the committee's report on the assassination, the House Select Committee on Assassination report, you'll get pissed off, and you'll be like, "Oh my God, it's a fucking cover up!" Ah. So Joe Biden being mentioned in this is just like how they felt about Joe Biden was one of the uh, variables that didn't really pan out to anything. So it's not a bad or good mention, but I thought it was, another one of those sky is blue, water's wet moments to say that, oh, if you've been exposed to conspiracy theories, then you're going to get angry when you read the uh, the official report on what happened. And this could be the JFK assassination, this could be 9/11, this could be a whole bunch of different things. It could be, in the future, it could be coronavirus. You know, that if you read an official report on what happened that was generated by the government, and you believe in conspiracy theories, it's going to piss you off. Let's see. Gwen says, I can clearly see in those vids that he is mishandling and inappropriately touching children and women. Way too many video clips of him. And it doesn't take a lot of manipulation, does it? It's like today people were saying, oh, well, if you didn't understand, the president wasn't talking about actually injecting Clorox into your arm, then you just failed an intelligence test. And what I want to know is, like, take what the president actually said about putting disinfectants in your system and having them work inside the cells and whatnot. Give me the best possible context for that, and it's still bad. But same you could say for Joe Biden with all the videos that they have over and over again of him with women and children and just being very handsy. I mean, even SNL calls him handsy Joe Biden, like in a skit. And a lot of people get their news, unfortunately, through comedy, especially millennials. So, how are you going to motivate millennials to vote for the guy who's a little too handsy? So saith SNL. You know, even given the best context for all of that, that he just comes from a very, touchy culture. It, it's not good. May not be criminal, but you kind of want your elected officials to not have this theme that could be so easily illustrated. Um, Gwen says, as well as the look on the kids' faces, along with their body language, speaks everything I need to know. You know, um, a lot of whether or not somebody is a victim is, how they felt about what happened. I'm pretty sure that Joe Biden has touched, a lot of people that didn't have that same reaction, but the ones who did have that reaction, I believe that, they were inappropriately approached. And it was caught on video. And it was based on their response, I'd say he didn't have the rapport with them to be able to get in that close with them. Just saying. Let's see. Dinah says the House committee got snookered. All the evidence they used to reach that conclusion has been debunked. Uh, okay. Well, I haven't read the House Select Committee on Assassinations report, but apparently, Dinah, you are privy to some theories that there was a larger coordinated criminal act, and you have been triggered, just like the report said you would be triggered. Because anyone who's been exposed to facts other than what was in the House Committee's report, this study says they get angry and will respond uh, to that committee report. So I'd say that the study holds up just with the one person that we have that I'm measuring it to. That little anecdote with Dinah. Um, so yada 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 says this is very very important moment for all Biden haters. LOL. Actually, we're in that part of the video that I saved the worst for last. Uh, that yeah, we're there. Jamie says, please unblock me from your Discord. No, you were sea lioning. Um, look it up. So this next study, this is from Business Source Complete. The title is What Super Tuesday Means for U.S. Tax Reform uh, by Josh White of International Tax Review. And let's go right here. The first mention, this is okay. This says Super Tuesday has clarified the Democratic primaries with a third of delegates uh, chopped up in one night. Establishment candidate Joe Biden came out on top with 8 states and 453 delegates, while the outsider Bernie Sanders won 4 states and 382 delegates. That's a good mention, right? But Biden comes up 8 times in this study, or sorry, in this article. I keep saying study and article as if they're interchangeable. They're not. This is an article. Um, this is a breakdown of the front runners. There's a section for Biden, Sanders, Bloomberg. In the straggler section, Bloomberg. So Biden and Sanders are the front runners here. Here's the other mentions of Biden are all highlighted. And it says that Joe Biden has presented proposals to raise more than 3.4 trillion in tax revenue, yet the plans are far more modest than those advocated by rival Sanders and Warren. That's not a good mention for it. I'm just saying. It goes on to say the Biden tax plan will raise revenue by closing capital gains loopholes, closing deductions for fossil fuel industry, ending the disparity between uh, taxing capital gains and dividend income compared to personal income. Biden would also raise the corporate tax rate to 28%. For some people, that line right there would be bad. If you're conservative, that's going to not have you jump on the Biden boat if you are also a Trump hater. You'd be like, yeah, I hate that Trump's part of my party, but I don't want the corporate tax rate to go up to 28%. So that's going to scare conservatives away that he's uh, got that on his platform. It says he would establish a 15% minimum tax rate established on reported profits of more than $100 or $100 million a year. This is similar to Warren's proposal for a real corporate profits tax. This is on top of Biden's proposal to double the GILTI tax rate from 10.5% to 21%. So a lot of tax hikes right there. And this last mention is the part that is really bad for Biden. You know, like when people read this article, they're going to be like, It says, at the same time, Biden has advocated U.S. sanctions against foreign tax havens to pressure them into complying with international standards. This is an interesting position for Biden since he represented Delaware, a state known for its tax advantages, in the U.S. Senate for 46 years. Right? So when I see that, I'm like, He's saying he wants to attack the tax havens now, but for 46 years, he was a senator of the state that basically is the tax haven state within America. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, not a good mention. So not a good look. Let's see. Next study. This one, also not a good look for Biden. It's called the San Diego Border Infrastructure Environmental Litigation Return of the Walking Dead. Dun, dun, dun. And this was in a journal called Environmental Law. It was published on January 1st. And there's one mention of Joe Biden, right? And basically, it says that uh, the Secure Fences Act of 2006 was something that Joe Biden, along with a whole bunch of other senators, actually voted for. So this is true of a lot of Democrats that are still serving in the public sphere. Um, Back in 2006, they voted to approve the Secure Fences Act, which is basically Trump's wall, right? And then all of a sudden, when Trump made it like a big part of his platform, like it was uh, one of the biggest bullet points that he was trying to sell the American public, all of a sudden they're against border fences, right? The overall uh, theme of this article here, it's actually saying that this border fence was bad for wildlife because it was keeping wildlife from being able to migrate across the border, right? So if you had a solid wall across the entire border, all migratory animals that ran up against that wall would be hurt by that when they're trying to go north and south. So this article is saying that hurts the environment. So we don't need to be doing that. But just the part that mentions Joe Biden shows that he actually has flipped on that issue of whether or not to have a border wall because it's Trump's thing. Because Trump wants it, now we're against it. Even though back in the day, we voted for more money to build secure fences than Trump wants now. So anybody looking into this is going to see that waffling flip flop of a whole bunch of Democratic senators on this issue. And it has actually been such a big issue that the shutdown of the government has been threatened over this issue, right? If you think back just a couple years ago, this was one of those things where they're like, "Oh, we don't like that one writer for funding Trump's wall that was his big ticket bullet point that he was trying to make his campaign about. We don't like that. It's too political on their side now. It just just in 2006, just 10 years before Trump ran on it, all of those senators, they all voted for it. That's Chuck Schumer, Dianne Feinstein, Barack Obama, and Barbara Boxer, along with Joe Biden. Not good, not good. Next, we have a mention in a study that says this is American Indians and the right to vote, why the courts are not enough, right? I'll give you guys a second to take all that in as far as where this is going. Um, this is published on March 1st. Now, mind you, published in the middle of a pandemic, so it's probably gotten zero readership because everybody's eyes are on coronavirus right now. But this was in the journal Boston College Law Review, which is pretty prestigious, right? Let's see. Myas' Dragon says Biden was senator from 73 to 2009, 36 years, not 43. That's a good fact check, Myas' Dragon. I was reading from the study, not from an actual place that would show me his actual tenure as senator. So for instead of 43 or 46 years, you're saying 36 years as senator of the tax haven state Delaware. And now he's trying to go after international tax havens when his own state of 36 years now. Okay, that's a 10-year difference, of representing the tax haven state. But still, if we're going to go with your actual number, I'm assuming of 36 years, still pretty bad. That's 36 years of being okay with being a tax haven and then attacking tax havens. Uh, Dinah says a fence is not a wall. Fences or walls are bad for wildlife in that study. Jamie says a wall is not a deterrent. I think that's true because most of the undocumented immigration into the country happens by plane. Let's see. Principled Uncertainty says Obama wanted a fence too until he had the power to do it. That's, he did vote for the Secure Fences Act. So, um, David says, have you seen the news about Mike Lindell? No, I have not. His recent comments about religion as well as his close ties to Trump might interest you. Okay, I will look at that later. Just go ahead and copy that for later. Gotcha. Um, so, back to this study right here. It says American Indians and the right to vote, why the courts are not enough. This is basically talking about how American Indians and Alaska Natives are being suppressed in their ability to vote, right? I think one of the biggest things about Native Americans on reservations is that many of them don't have mailboxes or like street delivered mail addresses. They all have PO boxes, and then like their actual address isn't officially like where they're registered to vote. They're registered to their PO box, and so then that creates problems. Uh, but yeah, there's a lot of voter suppression uh, as far as mail-in ballots and whatnot, right? So the reason why Joe Biden's name comes up in this study is letters from uh, Attorney General to Joseph Biden. Um, these letters are not good. Letter from same Attorney General to Joseph Biden. Letter from same Attorney General to Joseph Biden. Letter from same Attorney General to Joseph Biden. And letter from same Attorney General to Joseph Biden, explaining how there's a lack of polling locations on or near tribal reservations, and that this act that was supposed to help voting rights did not address other barriers that American Indians faced in exercising their right to vote. Multiple times, letters written to him saying, hey, motherfucker, look, you're not helping this underrepresented demographic here in America. And he did nothing for a long time. So not a good look. This is how academia sees Joe Biden. Last study that I will show you guys that I think is I saved the worst for last. Okay, this one is called "In Pursuit of Economic Justice: The Political Economy of Domestic Violence Laws and Policies." And this was in the Utah Law Review, published January 1st, 2020. Soak all this in. The title, right? And of course, it's talking about intimate partner violence and whatnot. So, a lot of people who read this particular article, they're going to be advocates for social justice. And now that uh, Bernie Sanders has had to drop out, and Biden looks like the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party, a big problem that Biden has is getting all of the social justice loving people that were going to vote for Joe Biden should he win the nomination, getting them underneath the fold of sorry, they were going to vote for Bernie Sanders, getting them under the fold of Joe Biden and getting them to back him with the same enthusiasm is a tall order, to say the least. I don't think it can happen. I am very, very concerned that we're going to see Trump win again because of there being too many Bernie or bust people who see that Biden does not represent any of the things that they were energized about, such as uh, government paid education, uh, Medicare for all, just climate change in general. Like, there's so many different things that there were differences between Sanders and Biden that all of these social justice advocates are just not going to jump on the Biden train, especially with what they're bringing up in the chat, all of the physical assault allegations, which I haven't found anything about that in the academic studies to date. But we'll look at this maybe later in the year to see if more studies come out. But anyways, this study is about intimate partner violence, um, domestic violence laws and policies, and whatnot. There's one mention of Joe Biden in it, right? And it is bad. It is really, really bad. So, it says here it's ironic that revisions to the bankruptcy code, described as draconian and enacted to protect creditors from bad market citizens, with disproportionately harmful effects on single mothers, were introduced and promoted by Senator Joseph Biden, who has been otherwise heralded as a hero by women's organizations for his support of the Violence Against Women Act. So this law gets put into effect that it's about um, how predatory lending agencies were trying to give loans that people could not possibly afford. The whole subprime mortgage fraud thing back in the past and all that. So they would get these mortgages that they should not have qualified for. And then they might have balloon payments in the end that made them have to default on their mortgages and whatnot. This disproportionately affected single mothers. The bankruptcy code uh, that made it so that it disproportionately affected the single mothers was introduced and promoted by Senator Joseph Biden. right there. All of the citations that are proper for this are uh, in the article, and really, I think this little nugget right here is probably going to come up sometime between now and November, because predatory and subprime lenders is an issue that we're going to hear about again, because right now the economy is tanking. Coronavirus, right? Lagging all of the other things that have uh, been crashing, as far as like our unemployment rates going way up, people filing for unemployment and all that. Um, you're going to see a housing market bubble burst, right? We've got Airbnbs that aren't being rented out because people are afraid to leave their homes. There's no trips being taken for conferences. There's just people not vacationing. These Airbnbs are sitting there not making money for people, and they're about to unload all these properties if they can't see in the next 2, 3 years that people are going to have more of a demand for vacationing in an Airbnb. So these homes are about to just slam the market, right? You're about to have a whole bunch of people who won't be able to pay their mortgage at the same time. And all of this is going to be a perfect storm for us to be talking about what happened in 2008 all over again. These predatory and subprime lenders. And we're going to find out which ones were actually still able to, you know, practice their predatory ways all the way up until 2020 when this bubble bursts, right? So when we find out that the single mothers that are disproportionately affected back in the last housing crash are also once again affected this time around, the laws that don't protect them anymore, because they were changed by something introduced by and promoted by Senator Joseph Biden, that's going to be a big news story. In the chat, Bugsy says hello. Hi there, back. I did notice that Bugsy is the latest uh, pledge to my Patreon. I thank you for that. Uh, Mias's Dragon says the major difference between Biden and Sanders is Biden actually worked while in Congress, whereas Sanders is known for not working, for sitting in his office and only coming out to make speeches. Oh, okay. Um, I think he's introduced a good number of things, but yeah, I think that if we're talking about who's been the bigger workhorse as far as being a power for bipartisan efforts, I think Joe Biden is the winner in that respect because, uh, well, he's more of a centrist candidate. For one, I don't think any of the Republicans would have anything to do with Bernie Sanders. Um, and Dinah says the irony being that Trump is still 1,000 times worse in the area of regulating predatory lending. Dinah, that is probably true. Trump wants all of this regulation to be slashed. For every new law, he wants 2 laws to disappear. That was actually something that was part of his campaign. So yeah, I see that. Um, Patreon right there. I'm trying to build it back up to its former glory. I lost everybody in November and December because I took a break. Um, Please, nobody in the future super chat me or anyone else if you can help it. I prefer coffee, or just become a Patreon patron. because it gives a bigger percentage of the money that you're giving to the YouTubers that you like. And I mean this for me and for everyone else that you might be supporting in these troubling times. Please make sure that when you do give to these creators, you give in a way that gives a bigger percentage. Super Chat takes 40%. I've already made a video on that. Bugsy says, and we've seen Bernie being there to make his votes. That is his job. And Poseidon, the person who inspired all of this video, shows up for the last 10 seconds and says, when you found out about the conspiracy within the Labour Party in 2017, did it shatter your faith in politics? Goddamn sea lions. Ah, okay. So maybe we'll look up Labour Party next time and see what studies are there about the Labour Party. I've been on for 56 minutes now. Talk to you guys tomorrow, and thanks for all the fish.